Well, hello and welcome everyone to another episode of Clearly Ambiguous. What are we talking about today? Well, we are not talking about something, we are talking about someone. And that someone is known as Volodymyr Zelensky, also known as the President of Ukraine. And you might wonder why I'm still wearing my glasses. Usually I remove that because that light reflects, and that can be. So anyways, so I thought that I should keep my glasses on because that will probably make me look more well versed, well read, and more articulate. At the same point of time, if you might notice that I'm speaking in probably an acquired accent. And why am I speaking with an acquired accent and a particular style? Because it seems like it has become fashionable, like our neighbors. They have gone to different countries in the world and they are liking to speak like this. So, anyways, uh, why are we talking about Mr. Zelensky? Well, Mr. Zelensky is an interesting character. Everybody does speak about him, but nobody actually speaks what goes on behind that man, right? He has put his entire country in harm's way, right? War with Russia. And at the same point of time, while he goes with a bowl in his hands to every country in the world, saying, his favorite countries, the Western Europe and the United States, the Western powers, basically the NATO powers, because he always had a childhood dream that Ukraine will one day be a part of NATO, right? And he goes to them and asks them for more weapons and more money, and now he's actually asking them for more troops as well, because I think he has probably pushed everyone in his country who is probably able-bodied into war anyways. So he's probably looking for other people to fight his wars now. Interestingly, if you look at what the liberal Western Europe thinks is, they think that the biggest crisis to them right now is that they would probably have one, and this has been happening for a very long time. The British at one point of time believed, and they I think still believe, that Russia is going to come westwards and probably everybody will end up speaking Russian as their first language instead of the other languages that are there in Western Europe. Now, that's the reason why they always keep fighting with the Russians, because the Russians just might. Anyway, so they went after the Soviet Union, but of course, yes, it was a socialist, communist regime that they wanted change, and they wanted Russia to open up, and everything's open, everything's going well. And if you realize that it's not that Ukraine does not contribute anything to the world. Ukraine, if you remember, contributes a lot when it comes to agricultural produce. It is basically a bowl of wheat, because they have huge agriculture in Ukraine. And while this man has pushed his country into war, he has also made sure that there is a stress on everybody out there, because Ukraine was essentially supplying a lot of food grains to everyone in the world. And then again, they have minerals, so on and so forth. Now, while Ukraine is not contributing to the world economy, they are not contributing to their economy as well, and they are basically destroying themselves by making sure that they go up against somebody who is a much more bigger adversary. And what do you usually do when you have bigger adversaries? You probably try to talk to them. But then again, the trend seems to be these days that you don't talk. You talk a lot to the microphone, as the Russian foreign minister usually said in one of the interviews, that he loves to convey messages through the microphone in front of media rather than actually getting to a table and having a diplomatic discussion. Because he has always loved the cameras. He was essentially a TV celebrity who's eventually become the president of the country. So he loves the camera. And I think he has probably pushed his entire country into war just because he loves to be in front of the camera, right? He plays the role of it. He's always seen in these fatigues and so on and so forth. He got ridiculed by President Trump as well. But then again, President Trump has a way of being disrespectful to almost about everyone. So let's not talk Donald Trump today, let's talk about Mr. Zelensky. But if you think about it, if he really wants to stop war, if he really wants peace, why doesn't he come to the table and say, let's talk? While the talks were going on to probably get leverage, and if you see, it's a very lovely thing. Right now, it seems like even the American intelligence experts, defense experts, are telling everyone that Russia probably has almost about 18 to 20% of Ukrainian land under their hold, and at the same point of time, Russia is probably making military advances, and they are probably winning a lot of engagements that they are getting into. At this point of time, you end up launching a drone attack against Russian air bases, and suddenly, if you see, it seems to be a coordinated effort by everybody, every mouthpiece organization out there. See, because essentially there has been a media blackout. Whatever we don't hear the Russian side of the story anyways, right? But even though the media is not telling us that Russians probably are making advances on the battlefield, the American intelligence is briefing world leaders about this. So he makes these drone attacks. And if you see, the media goes into the frenzy and they'll start talking about, he was probably planning this attack when he was probably speaking to President Trump. So everybody wants to give him that thing of, he's shooting thunderbolts from his eyes, and, he's the next big thing, so to speak. But what we need to understand is what President Zelensky is doing is that he's making sure that he remains president of Ukraine. Right? As famously as Winston Churchill, after whatever contributions he had made towards winning the Second World War for the British, famously did not win the elections, right? And he lost his prime ministership. So I think that could be something that is troubling President Zelensky all the time, and that's the reason why he does not want to end the war. We will talk about Putin on another day, but we'll talk about, as I said, on another day. We are talking about President Zelensky. So right now, he gets the attention that he gets because he has put his country in harm's way. So do you think he really thinks, the man he is, that if he comes to the table and talks and ends this war, would he get the attention that he's getting right now? Right? Because there are a lot of suggestions that there are already opponents to his way of doing things within his own country. He has, the media only reports his side of the story. So I think there is a martial law. I understand they are in a situation like war, and everything should be controlled at that point of time. But I think he's kind of enjoying this. Right? So, all said and done, it is his tactics are no different from our neighbors' tactics, who basically go to everyone and say, you know what, you are going to give us more. And when they get more, they actually use it to destabilize their neighbor. That is, if you know what I'm hinting at. I'm talking about Pakistan, how they use every penny they have got. Instead of feeding and developing their own country, they would use it to destabilize our country. And the reason for that is that when you have certain leaders who can basically stay in power by making sure the population is desperate enough and they cannot think to choose otherwise, you would never want to leave that position. So he's probably found his sweet spot, and he's probably going to move away from it, or one day probably end up in exile somewhere in the world. But I think what he's going to ensure is total and absolute destruction of his country and the population that resides in that country. while he fear-mongers about Russia to his east. Right? See, because the Russians are saying that, they've always been saying, we can stop where we are. But does he want to stop where he is right now? I don't think so. Because although the fascination that the West has is that if there is any country which is probably big enough to be called an equal, they would rather have it destroyed or cut to size so that they can probably, and that's the problem West has with Russia, that's the problem West has with China, and that's the problem West has with India as well. Right? See, I've said this before, that we Indians should probably not worry more about China or Pakistan because we know what their tactics are. We actually know. Even if they're saying the sweetest possible things to us, we know they will probably we can't trust them. But at the same point of time, we do tend to trust the West sometimes, right? And we do tend to get into deals and business with the West where probably our interests are not being met. President Trump keeps talking about this tariff thing. He would like to sell more in India. But at the same point of time, Indians should let go of all the tariffs and protect their own market. Because Americans, would they allow us? Right? Would they allow us the same liberties when we want to access their market? Anyways, moved away from the topic. Let's come back to Mr. Zelensky. Now, I'm sure there is some... any logical, liberal point of view would always have some point of... we have a vibrant opposition, right? Would have a point of opposition. But it seems like the West, when it comes to their own surroundings, they don't mind having a fanatic dictatorial comedian in charge of a nation, just so that they could probably see the destruction of Russia through him. I think the West and everybody in Europe, instead of worrying about the fact that one day Russia would probably invade all of them and they probably would be speaking Russian, they should worry that probably in most of their countries, the second language, or maybe one day the first language, will probably be Arabic. They should be more worried about that. But then again, what can they say? The liberal democratic structure that most Western European countries are so proud of, the liberal values they are so proud of, probably one day would be demolished from within their own countries. And it's not that Russia will have to come and do it for them, or probably the Chinese would, or the Indians would. It would happen very soon within their own countries if they don't realize what's happening. But then again, let's arm Zelensky to the teeth. And the biggest problem why the West cannot back down and Zelensky cannot back down from this war, Russians can actually, right? Because Russians do not care about the narrative. But the Westerners do, Europe does. And what is looking bad at this point of time is the fact that a lot of Western equipment, military equipment, and Western military strategy is actually failing against Russia, because they thought that probably, let's give them Stingers and probably they'll bring down a few aircraft and that'll be good, or let's give them missiles, they'll probably bomb something, let's give them drones and Russians would not retaliate. And Russians just seem to keep coming back. So Russians probably do not need to prove to anybody whether their weapons are working or not. But it seems like the Western powers have got egg on their face again, right? Because Afghanistan, eventually, if you look at it, was a great failure when it comes to the Western agenda, isn't it? They went there and they thought probably they will make that country into Western democracy. And look what happened. They eventually negotiated with the same people that they went to fight against, right? So anyways, I think President Zelensky, if he wants to stop the war, he can stop the war, but he does not want to. Europeans definitely do not want to stop this war because they, you know, they can rally support in their own countries because they can always tell their people that, Russia is a threat, Russia is a threat, and that's how they probably will get. Because obviously, when you have people who have a lot of liberty, they can be scared easily if you can tell them that your liberties will be lost because Russians are coming. As far as the Americans are concerned, well, Americans are immensely busy because their economy is in such a bad state, and their president seems to keep doing one diplomatic blunder after the other. And now he's probably picked up a school playground kind of brawl with his best friend, Mr. Musk. And let's see how that pans out. But President Zelensky should probably stop and think for a while that probably it will be in the best interest of everyone to just stop the war. Anyways, that's my time for today. If you liked anything, please hit the like button. Please share your views in the comment section. We will definitely try to pay attention to them, even if they are not supportive as well. Do let me know if you like the present style of the video or we should revert back to the original form. In the end, all I can say is that's it from me tonight. Until next time, you take care of yourself. Bye.